And we're going to talk about when and why I use it and how I use it. If that stone's got a crack in it, it's going to thud rather than ring. This is strictly for dressing your wheels. All right, my chain is nice and clean and dry. There's no oil on it anymore. It's really important to learn how to sharpen your chain with a file. And you can see we are making contact now. Welcome to Retired for Life. I'm your host, Brian. I retired a few years ago after 30 years in a factory job as a machinist in a millwright. I needed to rediscover what life could really be like. When we purchased this property, the house had stood empty for over a year, and the property had been badly ravaged by poor logging practices. Since my retirement, I've been working to renovate the home and restore the surrounding forest to its natural beauty and attract wildlife back to the property. Join me as I learn about nature and working with wood to create the backdrop for this new chapter of our lives. Well, hello YouTube, and welcome back to Retired for Life. Well, it's pretty much that time of year for me where I start cleaning up a few things and putting them away for the season. And today, that's the chainsaws. So with that in mind, we are going to have a closer look at the Oregon 410-120. And we're going to talk about when and why I use it and how I use it. So this machine comes with 3 wheels, a couple of tools. There's a couple of Allen keys here, a screwdriver, a dressing stone. Now don't mix this up with a grinding stone. This is not for grinding or anything like that. This is strictly for dressing your wheels and nothing else. Don't use it for anything else. And the other very important piece that we've got here is our gauge. This helps you check all kinds of things on the chain, and it also gives you profiles for your grinding wheels so that you can use your dressing stone to get the profiles that you want on the wheels. So I made up this little base here so I can set this thing into my old workmate, and this works very nice. So a couple of little safety tips for you. You're basically standing in front of a grinder that's got a wheel on it, a stone wheel that's spinning really fast. Be sure you have got safety glasses on, not sunglasses, not reading glasses, safety glasses. Because if something goes wrong here, there could be bits and pieces of this stone coming right out at you. So protect yourself from that. The other thing to keep in mind is it is pretty loud. This grinding process can be very high-pitched, very noisy. Make sure you've got hearing protection on. The other thing you want to do is check your wheels before you use them. If this has been sitting around for a while, maybe something's got banged or bumped or something like that. Maybe your wheel has got a crack in it. And you might not know that just by looking at the wheel. It may not show up. So what I like to do is just take this wheel and the screwdriver and very gently give it a little tap. If you get a ring like that, you know your stone's not cracked and you're good to use it. If that stone's got a crack in it, it's going to thud rather than ring. All right, so the next thing I want to do with you is look at the chain itself and what it is we're actually grinding. So in this drawing, we're taking a look at one of the cutting links. So in the side view, you can see the chisel edge, and then to the right of that is the cutting depth guide. And then in the top view, you can see the witness mark. We'll talk about that later. And then the chisel edge. Now, we don't have access to the fancy animation program that we've seen Logger John using, but we'll make do with what we've got here. All right, let's start out by bringing up the chainsaw bar. And then we'll have 4 cutting links come across the top of the bar. Now, this drawing is missing the connecting links between those cutting links. Now, next we're going to bring a red line down across the top of these cutting links so it's sitting on the chisel edge. So you can see that the links go down on a bit of an angle here, and we'll talk about that shortly. And the next thing to take note of is that there is a little bit of a gap between our red line and the cutting depth guide. And we'll get to what that does as well. So let's have a look at our manual and we'll figure out just what kind of chain it is we're going to be grinding here. It's always a good idea to save that manual. At the very least, give it a thumb through before you start using this thing, just to make sure you're doing it right and you haven't missed anything, any kind of preparation that has to be done to the machine before you use it. Much less chance of damaging it that way. So hang on to your manual. All right, let's see what it is we've got. So as you saw sitting on the cart, I've got 4 chainsaws that we're going to be looking at today. And all 4 of them use the same type of chain. Now, when we look at the chart here, we're going to go down to the second one. That is the round ground chisel. That is what's on all of these chains. So the important settings for us is A, the vice rotate angle, which we're going to be setting at 25 degrees. B, the down angle, which we're going to be setting at 10 degrees. And C, the head tilt angle. And that's going to be 55 degrees. And as you can see, for everything on this chart, all the different shapes, that 55 degrees goes through on every one of the chains. All right, let's get our grinder set up, and then we're going to figure out what size wheel we need for the first chain that we're going to grind. So before we go too far, I like to use a degreaser and get as much of the oil off of these chains as I can. Now, your grinding wheels are very susceptible to getting buildup on them, and that's going to cause them to be less effective. Now, there are much better wheels that you can get than these, like diamond wheels and that type of thing. And yeah, if you're doing a lot of grinding, that's what I would suggest. But if you're like me and basically a hobbyist, I'm just going to stick with these pink wheels. They do fine. Just take care of them. And watch out for a buildup of black on the wheels. If you're getting black build up there, that means the wheel's starting to get clogged up. Use your dressing stone and clean that off till the black's pretty much gone. That way you'll get a much better cut. All right, so I don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, so I just use a tub here and I throw my chains in it, in my degreaser, shake them around for a while, and then I'll take them out, wipe them off, let them dry, and then they're nice and clean. The oil is gone. There's nothing there, or at least very little left there, that's going to gum your wheels up. So let's get this chain all cleaned up and dried and ready to go before we put it on the grinder. All right, my chain is nice and clean and dry. There's no oil on it anymore. So the grinder should be very effective on that chain. Now, before we get started on that, let's talk about when I use this grinder. So normally I only use this grinder at the end of the year when I want to bring all my chains back to basically factory specs and know that I have got a nice machine sharp angle on them. The other time I will use this, which unfortunately happens more often than I want it to, is if I hit a rock. Now, when you're cutting down low or cutting roots or something like that, it's not that difficult to end up hitting a rock, and that'll do a lot of damage to your chain. Now, if you find that you're getting kind of a powder come off as swarfage from your chainsaw rather than the bigger flakes, don't keep going at it. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your chainsaw, and you're going to possibly end up burning your bar. So there's no point in doing that. Take it off and resharpen it. Now in the field, you're going to end up doing that with a file. It's really important to learn how to sharpen your chain with a file, because that's what you're going to want most of the time. When I'm out in the bush, I don't have this with me. So I want to be able to give that chain a quick sharpening with my file. And I'll usually give the chain a very quick touch up with a file every time I add gas and oil to it. Only takes a couple of minutes to do. So that way your chain keeps on cutting nice and quick, easier on you, easier on your saw. All right, so with it being the end of the year, I'm going to go over all of these chains on all of my saws. So the first chain I'm going to sharpen is the chain from the Husqvarna. Now that's my largest chain, so I need to change to the appropriate wheel for that. You can refer to your manual, and that's going to tell you what size file that you need for that chain. And that will also tell you then what the profile is you need on your grinding wheel. Now, these wheels do not have to be reefed up super tight, or you end up breaking the wheel just in the process of tightening them. They have this nice big kind of spring washer here that goes on the outside, and that's going to hold your wheel. So the wheel that we're putting on here is 3/16 in thickness, or 4.8 millimeters. So all you need to do is hang on to that wheel and snug it up. Give it a spin, make sure the wheel's on there properly and everything looks good. Then get your guard back on. Don't run this thing without the guard. All right, there we go. Guard's back on. So now what we're going to do is plug it in and spin this up to speed. Make sure everything's running fine. We're not out of balance or anything like that. So one of the nice things about this little grinder is it has a built-in light underneath here. You'll see that come on when I flip on the grinder. It's not hugely bright, but it's pointing in the right place, and it does really help. Now, as you can hear, our wheel is spinning. We have no funny wobbles or anything like that, so it looks pretty good. So I want to check our profile here before we go too far. All right, so when I put my gauge on here, I can see that my corners or outside edges of this wheel could use just a little bit more rounding off. Plus, I can see that the wheel has got a bit of black in here, and that means there is a little bit of buildup in that wheel. So we'll start it up, take our dressing stone. Remember, this is the only thing that this stone is used for, nothing else. We're going to take our dressing stone and just rub on the corners here and across the surface to make sure we've got that nice radius that we're looking for and that most of the black on the wheel is gone. You don't have to push hard with this stone. It just takes a nice light touch with it, and that's going to clean your wheel up. All right, we're just about ready to go. So on the back here, you can see your settings. So I have set this to 55 degrees, just like the chart calls for. Now, it is possible to put your chain in this thing backwards, so make sure you've got it the right way around. You can see here, I have the chain backwards. My cutting edge is actually facing towards my stop. That's not what I want. So let's turn this chain around and get it in the right way. So now that we've got our chain in the right way, there are two settings we need to consider. This back one, that's the depth. That will set how far down your wheel goes. And this one will position your tooth up against the stop where it should be for your cutting wheel. So let's get that all in position here and get this one ready. So this chain has been sharpened quite a few times. You can see I'm closing in here on the witness mark on this chain. So once you come up to that witness mark, that's it. The chain is done. You need to replace it at that point. And for me, it takes quite a while to get to that mark, unless, of course, I've hit a rock and I have to do a lot of extra grinding on it. Otherwise, a chain for me will last a number of years. So the first tooth I'm going to do here is this one that angles over towards the back of the grinder. So to get the down angle for this tooth that we're going to work on, I need to make sure we're loosened off here, push that all the way back, then check to make sure that we are on 25 degrees there, and then tighten this up on the bottom. So the next thing we're going to do is mark this tooth that we're starting on with black magic marker so we know where we are. So once we come back around to that tooth, we know we've done all of them. So we have to set our start position for the grinder. So you want to make sure that your tooth is pushed back against your stop. And I'm not tightened up here yet. So let's bring down. And you can see right now we're a little bit off. So I'm going to slowly bring our grinding wheel up. So that looks like where we want, right there. And the next thing I need to set is the depth. All right, so I apologize for the flicker that we're getting from my LED light. I want to make sure you guys can see this. So there is my depth setting right there. This has nothing to do with holding this bracket in place or anything. This is strictly our depth setting. So I'm going to bring my wheel down until I feel it touch there. Like that. Then I'm going to come ahead until I know I've touched this stop right here. Okay, we are actually ready to experiment now, to turn things on and see how the grinder goes here and where it's making contact. All right, let's make sure again we are up against our stop. Engage our lock and power up. And we're going to very carefully just touch this first one. Okay, we're down on our stop and we haven't hit anything. So let's bring this ahead just a bit. Now we're just starting to touch there. So we'll come ahead just a hair more. And you can see we are making contact now. And we are actually touching at the bottom as well. So that's perfect. So there's our first tooth done. So what we're going to do now is go around and do every one of the teeth that are pointing in that back direction. So we'll loosen off our clamp, come ahead to our next cutting tooth, clamp her down, and there we go. Again, we loosen off, come ahead to our next tooth, so you can see it's a very straightforward process. So I'll get all the ones done on this side and then I'll come back to you. So when you're grinding here, don't leave your grinding wheel sitting still or dwelling up against your tooth. The tooth could start to turn blue. And if it starts turning blue, that means you're taking the annealing or the hardening out of that tooth. And then you got a problem. So it's in and out. Don't dwell in one spot with the wheel. All right, so I have now done all the teeth that are facing towards the back of our grinder. And I had to go over this twice because I did find a couple of teeth that the grinding wheel didn't really touch. And that's no big surprise because I've been sharpening this for about a year now with a file, and it's just not perfectly even. But now my teeth are all perfectly even all the way along. So next is to switch things around for the opposite side. So we have gone down to the bottom and pulled the knob here forward. So we now have our downward sloping angle for the teeth. We are set at 25 degrees. But one of the things that happens here is all the settings you had from the first side are now basically gone. So you have to reset everything again. And I need to reposition my stop here so that I'm in the middle of that tooth that I'm working on. Just like so. And then I want to make sure that I'm back against that tooth with the stop. And we'll clamp it up. And now I need to check all my settings. And I'm close, but I'm not quite there. So we'll get these settings in place here, and then I'll bring you back. All right, there's our first tooth ground. Now, here's something that you need to keep in mind. You've had to change your settings, and it is really important that your teeth from one side to the other are the same. Because if they aren't the same, that means one side is going to be cutting unevenly. And that could cause your chainsaw to end up going down on an angle as you cut through your log. So take the time to check that. All right, let's get our verniers in here. So basically what I'm doing is just a comparison. I want to make sure that they're the same. The measurement itself doesn't matter. You just need to know that you've got them the same. And that looks really good. All right, so the next thing we have to do here is grind down the chisel guide. That's this tooth that is right in front of our chisel tooth. So this comes into your cut first, and that is telling your chisel how much it's sinking into the wood. So this is quite important. You don't want this too far down, or your chainsaw is going to work too hard because it's trying to take too much out with each tooth, and you don't want it too high. You've got to remember that this has got to come down. And between the top of your chisel tooth and the top of the guide tooth is a difference of 25 thou. And that is set up with this very simple little guide here, which you lay on top, over top of your guide tooth, and then file it down until you have come in contact with your guide with your file. So I've got my widest wheel in here now, and I have got this dressed off at 70 degrees. So I've got the head set back here at 70, and that means this is now sitting flat or parallel with our clamp, and that's what we want. So we have to get this 70 degrees in here with this wheel in order to be able to get down far enough with the head of the machine. Otherwise, we're bumping in to this stop here for the chain. All right, our first one is now set. I've actually touched the top of it here with black magic marker so that I know which one I've got. And now we'll just start cycling through every one of these guide teeth. All right, folks, so you remember our earlier animation where we had that red line come down and sit on top of our cutting teeth? Now, as you saw, those cutting teeth were on an angle. So as they get ground farther back, the farther down that line is going to come. But if they're not ground down or filed down evenly, you're going to get some of the teeth that are going to drop below that red line. So you're not going to have as an efficient of a cut. And then the other thing that's going to happen is your guide that's in front of that chisel edge of that tooth is not going to guide all your teeth in accurately if your teeth aren't all the same. So the whole thing is pretty important to make sure that you've got everything lined up. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't file your chainsaw chains by hand. As I said in the beginning, you need to learn how to do that properly, especially out in the field. It is a very important skill to have. All right, folks, so if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. And I'd love to have you think about subscribing to the channel. That would really help. So if you've got any thoughts, questions, comments, anything like that about this video or any of my other videos that you've watched, please let me know. I really appreciate hearing from everybody, and I always try to get back to everybody who asks a question or comments on my videos. So remember to stay safe out there, be good to each other, and we will see you out on the trails the next time.